Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. We traditionally record a year in review program and air it each December. This year, however, is a little bit different. I'm taking a look back at nearly 35 years of Newsmakers. I started hosting the program in 1986 when I was the Community Service Director for Missouri Southern's television and radio stations. My first Newsmakers aired May 7, 1986. It featured a follow-up of a Joplin City Council meeting. It included discussion about group homes, rezoning issues, and a proposal to renovate Union Depot. From that point on, Newsmakers focused on local news, issues, and people of interest. So tonight we're taking a look at some of those areas we covered. My first in-studio interview was with Missouri State Representative Chuck Surface, providing an update on news from Jefferson City. Ever since then, I have visited with elected officials at various levels. My first interview with an elected congressman was Gene Taylor in 1987.
Turning to foreign policy, we've seen in the headlines for last month the U.S.-Iran arms deals and hearings and so forth about that. Could you tell me a little bit about the situation as you see it and what's going on there?
I don't know exactly what happened. I don't suppose anyone does, except a very few people. But let me say this. This administration has done a tremendous job for 6 years. Now, this is a blip on the screen. There's no question about it. And there's some raised eyebrows. But by the same token, we're not sure that the president did anything wrong. He made a decision, and he may have been wrong, but he may have not been wrong. Throughout the history of our country, presidents have had to make some lonely decisions. Many times unpopular but tough decisions, and we can go back into history. The decisions that Washington made at Valley Forge, the decisions that Lincoln made that only he could make during the dark days of the Civil War, the decisions that Woodrow Wilson made prior to the entry into World War I, the decisions that Franklin D. Roosevelt made by himself on the Lend-Lease program, which was highly criticized at the time, prior to World War II, the decisions that Dwight Eisenhower made at Quemoy and Matsu when it looked like there was going to be an invasion of Formosa. And he drew the line and said, you do that, you've got to walk over the 7th Fleet. That was a tough decision. The decision that Harry Truman made, probably the most lonely, gruesome decision that any human ever made, when he had to make the decision to drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. It was a tough decision. But, you know, it killed a lot of people, but it saved millions of lives. And those were decisions that only presidents can make. Congress cannot administer foreign policy. Constitutionally, they're not supposed to. And only the president can make those decisions. Throughout the years, president after president of both political parties have made decisions. Most of them were right, thank heavens. Now, the president made a decision to go into Grenada and wipe out a communist buildup down there. It was right, no question. He made a decision to try to make some kind of an arrangement with Iran to establish a relationship with that country again, whose strategic location is very important to the security of the world, overlying the Persian Gulf, and we did have a good relationship with Iran back in the days of the Shah, and much due to American foreign policy, to the discredited American foreign policy, we lost that relationship because President Carter didn't agree with the Shah's human rights policies. So we got the Ayatollah, who has no human rights policies. So the president's trying to reestablish those, and I can conceive how he did make a deal with them. They're involved in a war with Iraq, being backed by the Soviet Union, that possibly he made a deal to trade some arms, or to let them have some arms to try to build up a better relationship. Well, it may have been right, it may have been wrong, but it was his decision. But he didn't do anything dishonest. He didn't do anything for personal gain. I'm convinced he did what he thought was right for this country, and I'm not convinced he wasn't right. But nevertheless, I think this can be blown all out of proportion, and what bothers me is when we see the news media refer to it as the Iranian scandal. There ain't no scandal. There's no scandal involved. It was a decision, right or wrong. And I think sometimes the media, in quest for a scandal, you know, goes too far. Of course, you know, on a slow day, they got to sell their papers and get people to watch them. But you know, I don't know whether it was right or wrong, and I think as far as the Central American situation is concerned, there's no question we've got to do something to stop that expansion of communism in this hemisphere.
2 years later, I focused on state government again with Missouri State Senator Richard Webster.
Next year.
So really a lot can happen after the first day of things that people bring in for discussion.
That is correct.
So, you mentioned the budget, and I know that in November there were reports that revenues for the state were up. Do you have a good feeling heading into the session with the budget situation?
Well, I just brought along today, let's see, this was last month, the December issue of a publication of the Council of State Governments, which goes into that federal Medicare Act, which extends farther in the area of Medicaid. And I noticed this is a national publication that goes to members of state legislative bodies throughout the country. I noticed that one paragraph, Missouri Governor John Ashcroft is asking the legislature for $68 million. He hasn't asked us yet because we don't get his budget message until the second week of the session. But that is to comply with the federal law to take care of those people that are not covered by insurance and are living below the poverty level. Now, that is $68 million off the top. We know that in the area of primary, secondary education, they've asked, I believe, for another $105 million. I could be wrong on that figure, give or take a few million. That's in addition to the $1 billion that we're already appropriating for primary, secondary education. There will be requests which will exceed the sum that we have to appropriate by about $1 billion. We can always figure that. And the hilarious thing is we might increase something by 15% and then read in the newspaper that we have slashed their budget. Actually, what we did was not appropriate everything they asked for.
So it's not slashing, it's just not quite giving
slashing,
everything.
it's just not giving them everything. And of course, when we finish the process, then the governor has line item veto, which the president does not have. So if we over appropriate, then the governor can eliminate items or reduce amounts. And we try to stay within the amount of money so that we make the choice, not the fellow on the second floor.
I've been fortunate to be able to interview every congressman and state senator from our district, as well as many state representatives. I've also interviewed the Joplin mayors and city managers since 1986. Recording interviews has been a way to capture local history. In 1992, one of those moments in history focused on Missouri Southern.
A national championship has come to Missouri Southern State College with the success of the softball team. Joining me today, Coach Pat Lapira and Diane Miller, the Southern catcher. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
We're taping this shortly after your successful weekend, winning the national championship. Some of the viewers may be wondering, what are some of your thoughts now that you've had a few days to reflect on what you've accomplished? Coach?
Well, Dink and I actually were discussing this on the way over here. I don't know that it's totally sunk in with all the fans and people that have called and congratulated. And I think in a couple days I'm going to sit down and I'm going to say, I can't believe we just won a national championship. It's unbelievable. Especially the community support, the parents, the fans, Missouri Southern. It's neat to see that they care. I think that's the neat thing. Softball isn't a top priority sport, but yet everybody showed that they really cared about how our softball team did.
Diane, do you feel similar feelings as far as the support?
Yeah, it was unbelievable the number of fans that we had there. People just kept coming in and kept coming in. People that, we never dreamed would probably be there. Our families definitely probably took up most of the stands, and that was a neat feeling also. And friends and people from Missouri Southern came, and the support was just great.
So do you feel that perhaps bringing this national championship home to Missouri Southern, you're also bringing it home to the community? The people who have supported you?
Definitely, I think so. I think they said it's been 20 years since we've had a national championship, so it's got to be exciting for Missouri Southern, for the faculty, the staff, all the departments. There's got to be a little bit of excitement from everyone. We were happy that it was in Kansas City area, because had it been in Michigan, it may have been difficult for so many people to come out and support us, so that made it really nice too.
Was the ride home a lot of anticipation, actually getting back home with the trophy after the win?
Yeah, we were excited to get back on the road and get home to see everybody, and we had a little get together after we got home, and people were there and cheering us on, and it was neat to see everybody involved.
Well, let's talk about the season. Of course, a very successful season. I understand the most wins you've ever had here at Missouri Southern with the softball team.
Yeah, our final record was 50 wins and 7 losses, which is really unbelievable in the game of softball. We also had some accomplishments that are equally unbelievable in that we went undefeated in conference play, we went undefeated in regionals, and we went undefeated in nationals. Those are things that you would never anticipate. When you get to the playoff situation, it's tough to win, and to go undefeated is just miraculous. So we did have a fantastic season in terms of wins, loss, and we also had a fantastic season in terms of accomplishments and goal reaching and so forth.
So a lot of team goals and team accomplishments. Of course, Diane, you have a lot of personal accomplishments with your All-America status and so forth. What about your personal feelings and your achievements over the season?
Well, it's definitely been, a lot of fun these last 4 years, and not only, what I've accomplished, athletically, but also the fact that I am going to, end up and get my degree, but yeah, the things that I've accomplished, not only go out to me, but it goes out to, my teammates all 4 years, and Coach LaPera, and everybody involved in the softball program, as well as Missouri Southern.
In more recent years, Newsmakers focused on the aftermath of the Joplin tornado.
Yeah.
And this is something that, obviously the impact on our community, but the impact on media, people may not realize what it meant to your news organizations when a story of this magnitude hit Joplin. So I thought maybe start off of each of you, kind of reflect on that Sunday, the storm hit Joplin, how it affected your news organizations and mobilized everyone. And Josh, of course, you were the radio stations.
And it was unique, just for the fact that we do this all the time, coverage, whenever something's approaching. So we were actually there a couple hours before, letting people know. But then, of course, I think just about every news organization, they went from reporting the story to becoming part of the story. And with our news organization, we're just a small group of 3 people. And 2 of my news guys actually lost their home. And they were in the studio, and they were reporting with the knowledge that they'd lost everything. But yet they were still there and doing what they could, as was the case with a lot of people at Zimmer Radio. They didn't have any homes, but they understood the importance of the event. And so it was incredible just being part of it, but I don't know, their sacrifice, just completely admirable.
Says a lot about the profession. I know, Carol, you in similar instances of the globe, people who were affected by the storm.
Well, that night, of course, I happened to be there because I was waiting for the graduation story to come in. Wanted to make sure it played just right. We were watching television, kind of watching the storm, thinking, I think this is going to just kind of go this way, and then all of a sudden, we could see it was on the ground. We took cover, got out, the calls started coming in. People at the Globe, because over the years we've done this, and maybe not knowing everything was helpful at that time because we thought, okay, one area has been hit. People started coming in, but instead of coming in saying, what can I do? I had 9 people in the newsroom who came in, and it's like, I've lost everything. And we just sat them down, and they started working, and I think for them at that time it was the best thing, because it was like, okay, I don't have time to think about this, but at least I can focus on getting a paper out.
And so the commitment to the job, and saw that on television as well.
Yeah, it was similar in TV. Our coverage of the storm, actually the tornado, began before the tornado arrived, and this is true for other media too. Our meteorologist had seen that this was potentially a dangerous day, and even though it was a Sunday, he then came in that day, came in early and started reporting on the potential for some severe weather. And I was at home, I was watching the coverage when the tornado hit Joplin and took out power on range line, took out our tower cam as we were looking to see the tornado. And my response was, well, I've got to go to the TV station. And I'm sure that the other media feel the same way. When there's a big story, you go in, you check in. We weren't sure at that point how bad Joplin might have been hit, but it was clear that it had been hit. I got there, a couple of others were there, and a problem for us, like for them, was that a lot of our employees were caught up in the storm. 7 people who worked at KOAM lost their homes. 5 of those worked on air in the news department. And so getting hold of people was a real challenge. And of course, not only because cell phones were down and people didn't have homes, and we didn't know if they were hurt and to what extent. So people other than reporters started coming in to kind of fill those roles. We had photographers going out, getting video, and then coming back and putting them on air and having them narrate their video. We have people in our sales department who had had some experience in the past in news who became reporters in a sense, and other people in different departments who came in just to make phone calls and start to relay information to us.
I've been fortunate to interview many well-known people who have visited Missouri Southern and Joplin over the years. In 1992, I interviewed Helen Thomas and Harriet Woods. Thomas shared her experiences as a White House reporter, and Woods shared memories of her background in politics. In 1995, an anchor from Cable News Network, Bob Lozier, visited MSSU on our set. He shared his thoughts about the changing world of news coverage. I was also able to interview with veterans from World War II about their roles in world history. In 1995, 3 veterans shared their thoughts about VE Day and its anniversary. Then in 2003, a Tuskegee Airman joined us on the program.
Well, a lot of experiences, you have very rich experiences from all 3 of you. As we're talking about the program, the focus looking at VE Day, the end of the war in Europe, perhaps from your perspectives, if you can try to capture the feeling at the time for not only people in the service, but maybe the country, as you've had this long war fought for many years and gone through the types of struggles you've discussed. What was the feeling, what were your feelings perhaps at the time when you heard that the war was actually ending?
Well, I probably had different feelings than Colonel Hoover or Bob Baker, either one had. Because there again, even though I'd spent a lot of time with the line outfit, I had been away from that unit for several months. Of course, and I was here in the States, as I said, up at Springfield, Missouri. That hospital was full of patients, people, battle casualties,
Right.
From both theaters, from the African-European theater and also from the Pacific theater. Here in the States, of course, we just fairly recently, at that time, experienced the trauma of the death of President Roosevelt. And the troops there, the patients, and the people who were taking care of the patients there at O'Reilly, well, it was, they were very happy, but it was not a euphoric demonstration or anything like that. It was a very sober moment in reality, because there again, many of those people were wondering, myself included, I wonder how many of the men made it, how many of the unit made it, how many made it through.
So you were thinking of the people who were still over there.
That was my thoughts, at least, and you could see that among the patients there in the hospital. I wasn't a bedridden patient or anything at that time. I was ambulatory. In fact, I had a duty assignment as a patient there at the hospital, and I had a couple of hundred patients that was ambulatory that were assigned to me as in a reconditioning company. They were giving some retraining and all to go back to duty. And of course, I got back out of the post because I wanted to be with that company. Those were my men at that time, to see and to be able to try to answer their questions and so forth. But it was not, troops that had never been exposed to that, perhaps the land troops and the civilians, quite euphoric, I'm sure. But with that group there, it was not a euphoria. It was well, thank God that part of it's over, but please, I wonder what I'll hear, how many people made it. Yeah.
What's really happening.
What's really happened.
Okay. Mr. Baker?
Well, of course, we were in direct contact with the enemy, so to speak, at that moment, and as I recall, the word was coming down that things could end at any moment, but we didn't really know until the moment arrived. And I know one of the orders that came down was to find the burgomaster, the mayor, and at the instant that this was formally announced, why they were to ring the church bells in the village, wherever troops were. And so I, still being a lieutenant, I got delegated the duty to go find the burgomaster and tell him. And so I took the interpreter and we explained to him, and the burgomaster had this sort of drained look on his face, and he very apologetically said, "I'm sorry." He said, "We can't ring the church bell because Hitler ordered those melted down." And so they'd melted down the church bell. They didn't have any church bell to ring. But the troops were happy, yet there was a bit of caution because the thing was not over in the Pacific. And this was part of the project, and we didn't really have a good handle, or at least I didn't feel we did, as to what the status was in the Pacific. And that was revealed very clearly real shortly thereafter, because they said, okay, you guys get to go home, you guys stay here and train, you're going to go to Japan.
But I was refused enlistment. I was told that all of the colored units were filled, no vacancies.
So they had a quota system. They wouldn't take any
That's
more than
right.
a certain number.
That's right. So I continued into college. However, in 1942, we had a national act that said all able-bodied college students, medically qualified, would be in the enlisted reserve corps. So, along with the thousands of others all across the nation, I was in the Army Enlisted Reserve. Still at college as a college student.
Right.
Spring of 1943, I'm called to active duty in the military. I processed in. There was a national test given that sort of established how smart I was. That national test, 150 was the maximum score. 70 was passing. 100, you're above average. 135 or better, you were a borderline genius. I get 129. The racial segregation system did not intend that any Negro, Mexican, Indian student would be able to do that.
They didn't imagine someone scoring that high.
That's right. So I had an idea about how smart I was. Well, I knew there'd be no problem. If somebody gave me a medical school exam, I could pass it. I didn't know, up till then I thought I could, but then I knew I could. Well, on active duty, I was first in the medical corps, then I ended up in the Army Aviation Engineer Battalion because of my academic background. My score there, plus the fact that I had college subjects, math, sciences, all those type things, I was offered an opportunity when I came on active duty to get a 12 to 15 month degree as a civil engineer or mechanical engineer. No, I want to go to medical school. Give me the exam for medical school, which they didn't do. In the fall of 1943, I had been in Florida for about a month. That evening, a friend and I were at supper, and he said, tomorrow morning I'm going to take the aviation cadet examination. Have you applied? I knew about the program. At Lincoln University of Missouri, we had the college training program, and I knew of several people who went through that, who went on to Tuskegee Army Airfield. I said, no. Then I got to thinking, I'll go along with you tomorrow morning. I've been here a month. I haven't heard whether I'm going to go to Howard or Meagher Medical School.
One of Missouri Southern's well-known alumni, Dennis Weaver, visited Missouri Southern and KGCS a number of times. In 1997, he was here on the Newsmakers set.
So really the connections with industry to get someone started on that, not only the mindset, but to start doing that, using the waste another way, putting it to use.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I know that there are businesses that are doing that to some extent, perhaps maybe limited now, using someone else's waste in manufacturing.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of products that are available to us. For instance, we can take 60% agricultural waste and 40% recycled plastic and make a wood that really serves us better than the wood that we get from trees. And in that process, it also becomes cheaper. So when it becomes economically attractive, then it's going to be used. You see, when it's competitive. If it isn't, it's not going to work. But that product, you can glue it, nail it, screw it, whatever you can, saw it, you can do whatever you can with wood. But the neat thing about it is that it's insect-proof, it's waterproof, it will not warp. You never have to refinish it, you never have to repaint it because the paint, the color is built right into the wood itself. It's an incredible product for boat docks or fence posts, railroad ties, pallets to make pallets to ship products with. So it's a wonderful, but there are a lot of those products that you can take and and use what we normally would call waste and make a very marketable product out of it.
Sounds like there are a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs, people who have these ideas to make them into a
believe
reality.
believe me, this is the business of the future. The economics is the business of the future, and it's going to happen. It has to happen. The alternative is disaster.
To have the continued decay of problems that you've had and so forth.
Sure, I mean, and also you got to create, environmental industries also means that we create from the beginning products that are not toxic, that we design things in such a way that we eliminate the problem in the design. Right now we're using a Band-Aid strategy or a mop-up strategy. We create a problem through our industries or through our production facilities, and then we see the problem and then we clean it up. It takes a lot of taxpayers' money. It's a wasteful operation, and what we should be doing is designing the product or the process to begin with so that the problem never arises.
And this is where programs such as the University of Colorado, where you have ties with the engineering school, the students who will be designing things in the future.
And this is the kind of program that we want to initiate at Missouri Southern.
Just this past year, I visited with Missouri Southern's retiring president, Dr. Alan Marble. He shared his thoughts about wrapping up his career in higher education.
Clean out your office for the last time and hit the road because there's such great people here.
Yeah, the endings are always hard, and I imagine this unusual ending that we've had to this semester has really changed things for you.
It's changed things for everyone. I feel badly, really, for our seniors that we didn't get to have the commencement that we had planned. You know, Senator Blunt was this speaker that we had agreed to have, and all of a sudden that's taken away from the students. And so certainly if they're watching, I wish our graduates the best and hope that they can come back in December and participate in a full commencement.
And I know you and the other administrators really had to shift gears quickly when those decisions were made.
Yeah, it happened fast. And the faculty, you got to tip your hat to the faculty because they gave up spring break to shift from face-to-face classes to go into distance learning, and did a great job. I've heard many compliments from students on what a great job our faculty did in helping in the transition and then helping them get through the last part of the semester in a great shape.
In addition to the faculty, people didn't realize the staff were still, support staff still working, maybe from home, but they were still helping the students in many ways.
You know, the support staff were really critical in this case. And in fact, I think Missouri Southern came through better than any university I'm aware of because we have such a great IT department and our distance learning group, Scott Snell and those folks. They did a great job of helping faculty put things together. And it all just fit together, like a hand in a glove.
You're tying that together. And your long career in higher education, would you ever have dreamt this type of thing would happen, where you just tell people, go home, don't come back?
No. Even in graduate school, we had to do scenarios with floods and tornadoes and all kinds of things. But, a pandemic, and boom, send them home at mid-semester and jumped on. That's... No one ever dreamed of it, I don't think.
As we wrap up 2020, I'm joining the list of people who are retiring from Missouri Southern. I've hosted this program for almost 35 years. That means 1,800 Newsmakers programs and more than 3,000 people. I want to thank everyone who's been a guest on the program over the years for taking the time to join us and share their stories. I also want to thank the many people behind the scenes who you don't see, the faculty, the staff, the students who are working here at KGCS at Missouri Southern. And of course, I want to thank you, the viewers, for joining us on Newsmakers, and I hope that you have a great future, and I want to say thank you and have a good day. Okay.